Okay, here's a quick tutorial on painting up stuff using the tools within Zbrush. So here's a very quick low polygon axe that I've created in 3D Studio Max, and I've actually put in some UVs in here. So we'll just have a quick look by using the Unwrap UV modifier. Look at Open UV Editor, turn off this, and you can see here now the UVs for the axe that I've laid out. Okay, you can close off these. We'll just cut that off. Okay, so there's our axe, and you can see the UVs as they are, with minimal distortion. It's a little bit on the handle, but I'm not too worried because this is just for a demonstration. I've installed GoZ, so if I click GoZ here, it will take me axe into Zbrush, which you can see is now loaded over here. So I'll drag this tool into, and it's just super huge. It just instantly gets really big. I'll click over to edit mode. One of the things I need to do, because it's just, this is the scale I'm having it in Zbrush, but it's bigger than one Zbrush unit. So just for ease of working on it within Zbrush, I'm going to go to deformation and unify, and there you'll see our axe suddenly becomes super tiny, but we can zoom back in on the little fella. Okay, now currently I'm not in perspective mode. I'll turn on perspective, another axe. Now it's generally a good idea when texturing in Zbrush with external applications to turn perspective off, because it just reduces that sort of foreshortening distortion. Okay, so if I use the standard way of colouring now in Zbrush, which is poly painting, so I'll switch to a standard brush, and if I just started painting on it straight away, obviously it distorts the mesh. Don't want that to happen, so I turn off Z add, and then I can paint on it. I'm actually painting white. Let's pick a different colour, red or green or something. I paint on, but you can see I've got absolutely no resolution. I can't paint anything smaller. If I start trying to shrink down the size, I think I'm painting some detail on here, I can't. It just, basically this is vertex painting. And unless I start subdividing my model to millions of polygons, I can't paint anything of any detail. Now, we do have, thanks to 3D Studio Max, if I use this Morph UV, we can see a nice clean set of UV coordinates. Okay, so we can put a texture on here, and Zbrush handles that absolutely perfectly. So let's go to texture map, and we'll go new texture. Now I decided to fill it with the colour I had, which was blue, so that wasn't ideal. So let me switch it to white. I can go to colour, fill object. Yes, and of course it will only fill. So if I go now, new texture, there we go, filled with white. Okay, so now let's try again, RGB, Z add. Let's try painting. So we should be able to paint with lots of detail now, right? Because we've got a texture. What's going on? No texture appearing. Okay, this is because we can't paint live on the model on a texture, unfortunately. However, Zbrush does have its own sort of thing in here for doing this, called Projection Master. If we go to Projection Master, it says, what do we want to do? Do we want colours, the shading to be projected on, the material to be projected into the final texture map that we're going to create, deformation, etc., etc. You can see if I click deformation, it includes any sculpting we do. We're just in painting mode today, so just colours. Fade, as its name suggests, just as a fade off to the edge or not to where it's visible. I tend to use it on, and then we can blend things. Drop now, and now you'll see I'm actually painting off the. I tried to rotate in the way I normally would, and I'm actually painting on it because the whole canvas is now a 3D model, or is now a paintable area. So I'm going to turn off Z add once again, So I'm just in material RGB. In fact, I just want to be just in RGB. And now for paint, so it's going to do nothing on the edge of the canvas where there's nothing. But when I go over the model, there we go. I can now paint with quite an area of detail. Little tiny squiggles. Okay. So this is one way of painting in Zbrush. So obviously this is my axe, so I'm going to have like a shiny blue edge here. It's not 100% opaque, so let's make that more opaque. There we go. And then red here, as we have in our stereotypical axes. Okay. Now I go to Projection Master again. This time we go pick up. But ignore the bits off there. But now it's painted our material on. So that's a great way of painting in Zbrush, which is fine. But it does only allow you to use the Zbrush tools. So what other options are there? Well, we can actually paint in exactly the same way as we did with Projection Master, but in Photoshop. So what we do there is we go to Document, Zap Link, clicking there. Again, it's pretty much the same stuff as what we had with Projection Master. Double-sided, yes or no. Fade, yes or no. Enable perspective, yes or no. I'm just going to go drop now. It's going to think for a second. And here I am now in Photoshop with the picture I was looking at. You can see I've got a layer on top here, which is the shading. It says do not edit. Turn that shading off and you can just see the material. And here's the actual layer we're on. It's a layer 1, that's important to remember, with the painting on it. So turn off that layer, turn off that layer, and you can see what we've got. So for example, I might create a new layer, and I might want, like because I'm doing a cartoony axe, I might want in this area a flood fill of sort of a chrome. So I've just got a simple gradient. By using clipping to the layer below, it trims it down. And if I create another layer, in fact, if I use the top layer on, I can see the effect it's having and what it will look like in Zbrush. And I can obviously reduce how that looks, just so I get an idea of where edges and things are. So back here, I can now come in and paint my red fire axe bits using Photoshop tools. So this is the only difference really, is that I now have the ability to use Photoshop brushes, photographic textures, whatever it is I want to use, I can use them here and import them back into Zbrush. So there's that done. Let's make some brown for the handle. In fact, I'm going to create that on another layer. And again, this is the other thing, you can use layers, you can use blending modes, you can do whatever you do, and you can see I'm not taking care about the edges. So here's my wood, again just coming in, and it's all about the angle of the picture, okay? So there's that. I'm going to pick a lighter colour here, and I'm just going to go really tiny, and I'm going to put some wood grain in. As you can see, putting super quality into this, not at all. Again, it's all about, you can use the quality of Photoshop to do as good a job as you want. So there we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip mask all these to that and put the opacity of this layer back up so you can see what it would look like now in Zbrush, all textured up. What I'm going to do now is actually collapse all these layers down in the middle. Leave the top layer, leave the bottom layer. These must not be edited. But collapse all the other layers, and it must be called layer 1 before you do anything else. Okay? Then you go File, Save. Don't worry about where it's being saved, it's a ZBrush special place. Now I'm going to switch back into ZBrush, and it says here re-enter ZBrush or return to external editor. So I'm going to go re-enter ZBrush. Again, it's just checking the information you want. Do you want perspective on, etc, etc. Click up pick up now, and pow, the texture has been applied. Okay, so as I look around it now, you can see where it's bled off the edges, but the texture has been applied. If I change my material to something maybe a glossy white or something like that as a toy plastic here, there we go, you get a better idea. And for the edges, all you do is you just come to the edges here like so, and then you just go document zap link once again, drop now, and then you'll be back in ZBrush in Photoshop. You say update, here's updated. You now just pick the axe, I can select that red, and then I can paint somewhere else here, around here. And so you just keep rotating around your model and fixing it as you want. Okay, so I'll merge these two together. Actually, let me do this first, and then merge the two together. Call it layer 1. It must be called layer 1, otherwise ZBrush will not recognize it. There we go. Save. Back to ZBrush. Re-enter ZBrush. Pick up now. And there we go. And you just simply work around your model in that fashion. Now you can see, as I switch to UV map here and go morph UV, you can see how our texture is actually being used. Or indeed, we can go down to texture map down here and you can see the actual texture map as it is. And of course, once you get to the point where you've laid out enough things and you can see what you're doing, and you can actually save that out and edit that texture map in Photoshop. So that's all super groovy. Now the other thing that we can do is use Photoshop CS5 for this kind of thing, and I'll just show you that quickly. Now if you happen to have Photoshop CS5 installed, instead of doing it this way, you can actually use the 3D functions within CS5. Now GoZ can be linked with both 3D Studio Max, Modo, all your different 3D programs, but it can also be used with Photoshop. So I'm going to set this GoZ to be set with Photoshop CS5. I'm going to press the R here to reset, set it to Photoshop. Now click GoZ, and here will be a little blue circle of pausing. There we go, into Photoshop CS5, which has 3D painting in it, which is awesome. So you can just go from here, switch to brush mode, and I can just start painting on our model just using Photoshop brushes. It's usually a little bit delayed. This is slow as well because I've got Max and ZBrush and goodness knows what else around, but you can see I can just paint directly on the 3D model. Okay, I can just paint directly on there. Here's the texture here. I have to double click on it in Photoshop CS5, it's one of the features, and there's the actual texture map, and again I can paint directly on there. It's just awesome. And then of course once you're done, you just go automate, GoZ plugin, and it takes us back to Photoshop. I'll get it right in a second, to ZBrush. Little blue wheel of pausing there, and there we go. Don't worry about that little error message. So there you can see you can use Photoshop CS5 to paint directly on your model. And then as we saw there, if I just reset this to 3D Studio Max and then click GoZ, Back to Zbrush, go Z. There we are. And now in 3D Studio Max, it's actually all set up in here with textures, materials, and everything. So I hope you find that useful. Have a play.